I was born with a strong sense of pride, yet I was born into a reclusive family. To build a grand reputation, I claimed to be a divine physician, specializing in all kinds of rare and complex illnesses. The prince heard of my name and offered a fortune to invite me to his estate to treat his sickly heir. He even promised, if you can cure the heir, this prince will bestow upon you the title of Jiangnian's foremost female divine physician. Coveting the empty title, I braced myself and accepted the task, but I only knew how to use medicine. I didn't know how to save lives. Overnight, I concocted a batch of my unique, secret medicines, hoping the opposing properties of the drugs might help prolong his life. Who would have thought that right after I fed them to him, the heir would spit out a mouthful of congested blood?
May I ask, divine physician, who was your master?
A person has 7 orifices, but now, having taken my elixir, Xi Xingci's face was deathly pale, and blood was trickling from the corner of his mouth. Hearing the commotion, the prince outside knocked on the door.
Physician Wu, how is the situation inside?
Fearing the heir would cry out for help and expose the fact that I knew nothing of medicine, I hurriedly fumbled a silence pill out of my pocket and stuffed it into his mouth. Only then did I respond calmly. Everything is under control. However, the heir's pulse is weak, and his breathing is unstable. Would the prince please wait quietly for a moment and avoid disrupting my diagnostic process? The noise outside subsided. I let out a sigh of relief. I looked down, intending to apologize to the heir, only to find that not only was his mouth closed, but his eyes were closed as well. With a trembling hand, I checked his breathing. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. He was merely fast asleep. My family has made medicine for generations. My great-grandfather was the god of medicine. My grandfather was the sage of medicine. And my father was the king of medicine. Our reputation for medicine spread far and wide, and the neighbors all kept a respectful distance from our family, unwilling to associate with us. But I have been competitive since childhood, and vain. Always eager to win others' praise. 3 months ago, I happened to rescue a man in deep trouble in our village. Upon waking, he not only bowed to thank me, but also personally wrote a thank you letter and sent it to the village chief's house, widely publicizing my good deed. Since then, I became obsessed with the feeling of practicing medicine and helping others. But in reality, I don't know how to treat illnesses at all. Anyway, when I encountered someone with a persistent high fever, I would feed them a heart-chilling pill, making them shiver all over with cold. When I encountered someone plagued by strange ailments, I would use bait to release centipedes to eliminate the affliction inside their body. With such methods, I actually began to gain some fame gradually. Quite a few people came seeking my help. 3 days ago, the prince of the imperial court came to seek medical help, and I knew my opportunity had come. Only when I arrived did I realize that Xi Xingci's condition was even more troublesome than I had thought. He was already weak by nature, having sustained his body with medicine since childhood, and now his ailments had become deep-seated and hard to cure. If not for the rare treasures the prince searched for to keep him alive, an ordinary person would have been gone long ago. Fearing I couldn't wake him, I prepared 3 doses of highly potent medicine in a row and forced them down his throat. Hard work pays off. As dawn was breaking, the person on the bed began to foam at the mouth. He was waking up. How do you feel now? I leaned in to ask. Are your internal organs churning? Unbearable and piercingly painful? Xi Xingci's already bloodless face looked even more ghastly pale at this moment. He parted his lips, but couldn't make a sound. Only then did I remember that the silence pill I gave him earlier hadn't been neutralized yet. I quickly fished a small red pill out of my cloth pouch and stuffed it into his mouth. The man found his voice. His thin, frail body, at this moment, still carried a somewhat otherworldly air. His voice was cold as he looked at me and said, word by word,
no matter how much my father is giving you, I will pay you double. 10,000 taels of gold, plus 2 grand mansions. Give me a quick death right now.
He wanted to die, but that wouldn't do. I didn't come all this way for the money. It was entirely for the official title. By normal means, I couldn't have woken him up. I had no choice but to fight poison with poison and try my luck. Now, even if he didn't want to live, he had to hold on until I received my reward before I could leave. Just then, Prince Ning'an, who had been waiting at the door, knocked again.
Physician Wu, how is the situation? May I come in to see my son?
Though his tone was polite, I could already detect a stern edge to it. I looked back at Xi Xingci, who had his eyes cast down, looking half dead. I lowered my voice and asked, does it really hurt that much? Xi Xingci shot me a sharp look. I swallowed hard, feeling guilty, and pulled out another pill.
What is this now?
The beat, at will pill. Once you take it, you will lose all sensation of pain. Even if someone beats you up, you won't feel a thing. But there is a catch. Once the medicine wears off, the pain will double. I scratched my cheek, Since you're bent on dying anyway, just do me a favor and help me hold out until your father fulfills his promise. Once I leave, you can suffer all you want. Xi Xingci stared at me for 2 seconds.
Do you have a medicine that can end it all peacefully?
I nodded immediately. He hesitated no longer and threw back his head to swallow the pill in his hand.
If you break your word after this is done, then don't expect to leave here safely either.
As soon as he finished speaking, the door was pushed open by several guards. The prince's stern face instantly lit up with joy when he saw Xi Xingci half reclining on the bed.
Sire, you're awake.
Having taken the relief pill, Xi Xingci's complexion had returned to normal. The prince shook his wide sleeves, tears already glistening in his cloudy eyes.
A divine physician. Indeed, a divine physician. Reward her handsomely.
I waved my hand. You flatter me, your highness. Bestow a title upon her.
Bestow it right now. Bring me a brush.
With a grand wave of his hand, the prince was about to write an inscription to confer a title on me when a servant suddenly brought urgent news. Zhang Shengcheng, the prefect's son, had paid an unexpected visit. He claimed he had encountered a quack doctor who had completely ruined his legs. He was now in a wheelchair, clamoring for revenge. Young Master Zhang was a cousin of sorts to the prince, and the matter of a quack doctor also concerned the stability of Shu. So, before he could attend to me, the prince, upon hearing this, hurried off to investigate. My temples throbbed. Xi Xingci noticed my embarrassment. He looked up slightly.
Don't tell me this has something to do with you too.
It did indeed have to do with me. A few days ago, young Master Zhang had been bullying some commoners and got his right leg broken by someone. Not daring to make a public scene, he went to a clinic for treatment. Having secretly heard of my reputation, he came to seek my medical help. He was screaming and wailing in unbearable pain. His henchman warned me.
Hurry up and stop the young master's pain. If you let him suffer any longer, or if he is left with any permanent ailment, watch out, or your family's future will be ruined.
The threat worked. In my panic, I quickly had him take the bone-shattering pill to stop the pain instantly, leaving both his legs completely numb to eliminate any future trouble. But I didn't expect that once he was cured, instead of being grateful, he went and trashed my clinic instead. My coming to the prince's manor this time was actually to seek refuge. Xi Xingci pinched the bridge of his nose.
They call you a rogue doctor, and you certainly live up to the name. Tell me, what kind of help do you want from me this time?
You are wise, heir apparent. I immediately began to flatter him. You only need to find an excuse to call young Master Zhang into the inner room, and I will have my own way to make him shut up. I won't take advantage of you for nothing. In exchange, I can tell you who drugged you before. Xi Xingci's face darkened slightly.
How do you know who drugged me?
How is that hard? Every medicine in the world has an origin. In the entire martial world, there are only 4 major sects. I have studied medicine since childhood. With just one look, I can tell where it came from. But don't worry, my lips are sealed, and I will never speak of it to anyone. Just like the fact that the prince is not your biological father. Haven't I kept it to myself until now?
How insolent. The prince is not my biological father. Do you even know what you are saying?
Oh, you didn't know. I covered my mouth. To know medicine, one must first know bones. The bone structures of the prince and you, heir apparent, are vastly different. They definitely cannot be biological father and son. Xi Xingci clutched his chest, taking a moment to compose himself, and gritted his teeth.
I will get Zhang Shengcheng here for you. As for you, keep staying here.
The effect of the slow-release pill only lasts for half a day. Once night falls, the suppressed pain surged back into Xi Xingci. He leaned halfway against the couch, his white inner robe already soaked with sweat. This kind of pain, though I have never experienced it myself, I have heard my father describe it. Even martial arts masters with deep internal energy cannot endure it for more than half a burn of an incense stick, let alone him, a weakling who has been a medicine jar since childhood. Yet Xi Xingci not only forced himself to hold on, but even flipped through his book with an ordinary expression. What a strange man. I took a bite of the sweet rice dumpling and asked him sluggishly, I already told you that the one who poisoned you is the one in the Eastern Palace. Can you talk to your father soon? Give me the plaque, quickly, and let me leave. Xi Xingci's fingers flipping the book paused slightly. He raised his eyes to look at me and asked,
You are but a mere female physician, and the person you are accusing is a powerful noble in the capital. How can I believe you?
The medicinal properties in your body are quite chaotic, but the most violent among them is the 7-star powder. This powder is refined from polar condensation dew, which only the Constellation sect possesses. They have aligned themselves with the imperial court and have always been at that person's disposal.
Even if what you say is true, I have no grievances or enmity with him. Why must he put me to death?
Probably because you are the emperor's biological son. Seeing the look of shock on his face, I let out a hiccup. So he didn't know this either. When I was young, I followed my grandfather to the capital to audience the emperor. The emperor's majestic presence remains fresh in my memory to this day. When I first saw Xi Xingci, I noticed the same aura of the same origin. They are definitely biological father and son, without a doubt. I didn't know if it was because the successive blows were too great, or because the pain in his body had intensified. But Xi Xingci slowly closed the book, lowered his forehead, and was completely unable to speak. I didn't want to meddle in too many affairs. Since everything had been made clear, I would go find the prince to claim my reward and leave.
You may leave.
This time, Xi Xingci did not stop me.
The moment you leave, I will immediately crash myself against this pillar. Forget about receiving any rewards or titles. By then, everyone in the city will know that you bragged but failed to deliver. Not only is your medical skill mediocre, but you are also a big braggart. You will lose all your face.
Isn't this a bit too cruel and malicious?
Oh, I almost forgot. After you ruined young Master Zhang's legs, fearing he would talk too much during the day, you poisoned him with some 7-day laughing powder, didn't you? Within 7 days, as long as he opens his mouth, he will laugh hysterically, just like a madman. What do you think my father will do when he finds out about this?
I silently pulled back the foot that had stepped out of the room. I won't leave, all right. He closed his eyes and fell silent again. I glanced at him and sighed in my heart, seeing how pitiful he looked. I decided to play the Good Samaritan to the end. I walked over and pulled directly on his arms with both hands. His thin, pale shoulders were exposed, and the panic in his eyes could not be hidden at all.
What are you doing?
You won't be able to bear the pain of taking the pill again. Right now, this is the only way to help ease it for you. Without waiting for him to react, I pressed my cold hand against his back. The man immediately let out a muffled groan. His body was too weak to resist, and the tips of his ears turned bright red.
You are a girl, after all, and it is not completely dark yet. There are still guards standing watch at the door. If you must, at least wait until...
His words suddenly cut off. Xi Xingci looked down and saw a red scorpion the size of a fist crawling out of my sleeve. Its giant stinger, guided by my palm, suddenly lunged at him. Wait until what? The man's body shuddered slightly. Then, his complexion suddenly improved. At the same time, the red scorpion's shell gradually turned a deep dark green. After being stung by the scorpion, Xi Xingci calmed down completely, and his cold sweat visibly reduced. He didn't answer my question, but asked instead, "What is this?" Feeling a bit sorry for it, I stroked the scorpion's head. This is my beloved pet. It is timid and kind by nature, worrying that its venom is too strong. It never stings anyone on its own initiative. Seeing that you're a handsome man today, it actually snuck out and stung you. Look, after touching your blood, my little red-clawed pet has turned into a little black-clawed one. As I finished speaking, the red scorpion rubbed its head against my palm, telling me not to worry. Xi Xingci looked at me, then looked at my scorpion, and couldn't help but twitch his lips. Finally, he asked,
Are you people from the Poison Valley? But doesn't your sect have a rule to only poison and never cure? And because of that, you were crusaded against by the righteous sects and classified as outcasts. How is it that...
Hearing this, the little scorpion quickly scurried back into my hem. I quickly denied it. No. I am absolutely not. A good person like me, who is dedicated to saving lives and helping the injured. How could I possibly associate with such a dark organization? Xi Xingci stared at me, showing no sign of whether he believed me or not. I didn't expect that he wasn't the fool I thought he was. He actually had some shrewdness to him. I quickly spoke up to change the subject. Since you could have just bashed your head to death, why did you still ask me for a lethal poison? He pursed his lips.
Bashing my head is not elegant. Fair enough.
After that day, I stayed at the prince's mansion, having saved Xi Xingci's life. Everyone in the mansion regarded me as an honored guest. The prince had a room specially clean for me to stay in, and promised once again,
As long as you can cure Xi Xingci, I will ask the emperor to bestow upon you the title of the world's greatest female physician.
I quickly did the math in my head. Zhang Yi from the Huichen sect is my archrival. She has worked diligently, treating patients for 20 years, and even now, she is only dubbed the Divine Hand Fairy by the martial arts community. I only have to cure one person to get official recognition as the world's greatest. It is a win-win situation, no matter how you look at it. And the next time we meet, I can totally outshine Zhang Yi. So, I gladly agreed. When I agreed, Xi Xingci gave me a deep look, as if hesitating to speak. Once back in the room, he finally spoke up.
Are you sure you can cure my illness?
Of course I can't. I'm not a real doctor, but I don't care. If the little red scorpion stings you, it can extend your life for about a month. After that, I'll claim to the public that you've recovered. Before you meet the emperor, I'll give you a false appearance pill to block all your meridians. You'll be lively and active, guaranteeing the imperial physicians won't see any problem. Once I successfully get my title, you can just let nature take its course. It is a win-win for both of us. With that said, the little red scorpion slipped out and waved its claws at me, and did a split with its front legs.
You certainly are straightforward.
Xi Xingci's mouth twitched.
How much longer do you say I can live?
About a month.
That should be enough.
Enough for what?
To settle scores with him.
Isn't he being a bit too candid? I immediately shook my head. I'm not doing it. The Poison Valley is a neutral sect and never gets involved in court disputes, settling scores with the crown princes. That is a capital offense. I'm not getting involved. Xi Xingci let out a sigh.
Forget it. It is only natural to fear death and cling to life. It is also human nature to feel fear and dread. I will speak to my father and give you the title of the #1 divine physician of Jiangnian. You may leave today.
My eyes widened in disbelief. Me? Fear death and cling to life. Fear and dread. Back when you were still playing in the mud, I was already spiking other people's bowls. He is just a mere opponent. Speak up. How do you want him to fall? After that day, Xi Xingci became noticeably busy. People constantly went in and out of the prince's manor. There were farmers selling vegetables, shop assistants, and government clerks. Every one of them would stay in Xi Xingci's study for a brief moment. From their footsteps, I could tell these people possessed extraordinary martial arts skills. From their statures, I could deduce that many of them were elites from the military. I didn't understand court politics, but I could see that this Xi Xingci was by no means an ordinary man. It was just that his physical condition was too poor. The red scorpion could temporarily alleviate the poison, but his body could only recover through quiet rest. I knew his days were numbered, so it was understandable that he was racing against time now. Yet, I felt inexplicably irritated. I attributed this emotion to professional ethics, stemming from a sense of responsibility for a patient's body. I have a habit. When I'm irritated, I want to use medicine to make others feel miserable too. Unable to sleep at night, I thought it over and decided to enter the palace to meet that person. Under the cover of a dark and windy night, I changed into night clothes and flew straight out. I smoothly made my way to the roof of the eastern palace, lifted a roof tile, and prepared to sprinkle some medicinal powder below. Speaking of which, I forgot to introduce myself. Since I was a child, there have been two things I've been exceptionally good at. First, my medicine making skills are second to none. Second, my lightness skill is outstanding, so once I make a move, I can run incredibly fast. To this day, no one has ever been able to catch me. Just as I pulled out my small pouch of medicine, my right hand was suddenly grabbed by someone. I gasped in shock. I hurriedly looked up. Xi Xingci, why are you here?
I should be the one asking you that.
He snatched the medicine pouch from my hand.
Even you could figure out, based on the type of poison, that it was the Eastern Palace who made a move on me. Naturally, they would also be able to tell from what is in your hand and guess that you are on my side.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It is a good thing I didn't do it. Otherwise, wouldn't I have brought trouble upon my family? But then I realized, I already told you, I'm not on your side. As soon as the words left my mouth, patrolling guards walked over, having noticed the commotion.
Who is there? Who is up there?
The man beside me reacted instantly. He grabbed my hand.
Come with me.
With that, he soared into the air as if riding on clouds. He was so fast that I almost couldn't keep up. Once we were back at the prince's manor, my expression gradually grew complex. You know, martial arts. I had taken Xi Xingci's pulse many times, yet I had noticed absolutely nothing. Only top-tier masters can conceal their pulse. This meant his inner strength was incredibly profound. Xi Xingci pursed his lips.
I studied under a famous master and stayed on the mountain for 7 years. However, the old master has already passed away and is now wandering the immortal realm.
I clicked my tongue in amazement. No wonder you've managed to survive this long with a body like yours.
Do you have nothing else to ask?
I grinned. The more one knows, the faster one disappears. Besides, even if I asked you, you wouldn't tell me the truth. It is better not to ask at all. The way Xi Xingci looked at me changed again and again. Then, he let out a soft chuckle.
You are indeed quirky and unpredictable. I really can't see through you.
More than half of the month had already passed. I could clearly feel that the red scorpion's suppressing effect on Xi Xingci was weakening. Yet, he behaved completely normally. He still met with all kinds of people during the day to discuss important matters, and at night, he would read, paint, admire the moon, and play chess. Since childhood, I had always been someone who couldn't sit still. To me, he was simply an absolute anomaly. Aren't you afraid at all? Seeing him start to grind ink again, I finally couldn't help but ask.
Afraid of what? Of dying.
Xi Xingci chuckled softly. Instead of answering my question, he changed the subject and said,
We've known each other for so long, Yet I don't seem to have given you anything. Let me paint a portrait of you.
With that, he actually lowered his head and began to sketch. Seeing this, the little red scorpion, which had been sleeping in my sleeve, poked its head out. It crawled up my sleeve onto my shoulder, raised its 2 claws high, and did a split. I began to suspect if my little scorpion had been dazed lately by the scent of Xi Xingci's medicine-soaked body, forgetting that it was actually a venomous creature. But truth be told, Xi Xingci's painting skills were truly exceptional. On the surface, I acted dismissive, but in private, I absolutely treasured it. He really was a man of talent. What a pity. Fearing I wouldn't find such a good artist after he passed away, I specially asked him, based on my vivid descriptions, to paint my parents, grandparents, and my brother and sister-in-law as well. Then, I packed them up and sent them home as souvenirs for them. Just after returning from the courier station, someone came to visit the manor, specifically asking for me, the divine physician, to treat an illness. I had always been casual and free in the prince's manor, so I swaggered out behind the messenger. After twisting and turning through the streets, we entered a private residence. He took off the bamboo hat on his head, revealing a young face.
Divine physician.
The visitor was named Zhang Xingyan. He was the very first person I had saved back in the village. I didn't waste any words with him and asked directly, "Did you find out what I asked you to investigate?" Zhang Xingyan was a man of the martial world with numerous and widespread connections. Usually, there was no information he couldn't dig up. What I had asked him to help with this time was to investigate Xi Xingci's background. Hearing this, Zhang Xingyan furrowed his brows and said in a low voice,
Divine physician, you've taken on a bit too big of a deal this time.
Xi Xingci was originally born to the emperor and a noble consort. Since the empress had no sons of her own, the emperor named Xi Xingci the crown prince and sent him to the empress to be raised. But since he wasn't her own flesh and blood, the empress worried the crown prince would have divided loyalties in the future, so she controlled him with drugs. When Xi Xingci was 6 years old, the empress suddenly became pregnant and gave birth to a boy. The crown prince had already been established. To clear a path for her own child, the empress increased Xi Xingci's dosage of the drugs. The emperor, unaware of the truth, only thought Xi Xingci had a weak constitution. He found a highly accomplished monk for Xi Xingci, sent him out of the palace, and handed him over to Prince Ning for care. Zhang Xingyan advised me,
I know you want to save Xi Xingci's life, but to that person, his survival is bound to be a trouble. If it is just for a good reputation, I naturally have ways to help you. There is no need to wade into these muddy waters.
My mind was in a mess, and I shook my head. I'm afraid I have no choice but to get involved in this mess. Just as I was about to speak, Zhang Xingyan's expression changed. He put his bamboo hat back on.
Someone is coming.
He and I became alert at the same time. At that very moment, the wooden door was pushed open. Xi Xingci walked in. I was taken aback. Why are you here? Xi Xingci's gaze lingered on me for a moment. Then he looked at Zhang Xingyan.
The servants reported that a man took you away. I was worried, so I followed to take a look.
Only then did I explain. This is an old friend who came to me for medical treatment.
What kind of illness can't be treated at the prince's manor, that you had to hide in such a remote place?
He stared coldly at Zhang Xingyan.
And wearing a bamboo hat to cover his face. He clearly has ulterior motives. It is hemorrhoids.
Fortunately, I reacted quickly. As soon as the words left my mouth, Xi Xingci and Zhang Xingyan both looked at me at the same time. Xi Xingci's expression grew complicated. He looked at Zhang Xingyan. Zhang Xingyan first glanced at me, then clutched his backside and nodded solemnly. For some unknown reason, on the way back, Xi Xingci was sullen and unhappy. It wasn't until we got home that he asked me, "Do hemorrhoids require examining that area?" Of course. How can I prescribe the right treatment without looking? He fell silent again. For the entire day, he didn't say a single word to me. By evening, it suddenly dawned on me. Could Xi Xingci be jealous? I had heard other physicians say before that when a patient stays with a doctor for a long time, they develop a certain psychological dependency, secretly comparing themselves to other patients. Could it be that he also has concerns in this regard? Is he blaming me for treating someone else first and neglecting him instead? It is highly possible. After all, the prince's estate pays me a handsome sum. I decided to coax him a little, so I explained to him, "You might have misunderstood. Hemorrhoids indeed require examination." But I wasn't the one who looked at Zhang Xingyan's backside. My little scorpion did. The little scorpion, which had been fast asleep, instantly crawled out of my sleeve. I quickly nudged it back in. "You know my scorpion can heal people." Xi Xingci believed me. His expression indeed softened quite a bit. After a moment's hesitation, he said,
Tonight, I don't want the little scorpion to sting me.
I nodded in agreement. "Then I'll find another way to help relieve your pain." The angry little red scorpion gave my arm a fierce sting. Sting away, sting away. Anyway, with my unique constitution, I am immune to all poisons. I'm not afraid at all. Wait, I am immune to all poisons. My elders always said, I am a once-in-a-century medical genius. When my fellow disciples accidentally touched toxic substances, they had to rely on antidotes to recover. Being exposed to too many medicinal properties could cause a rejection of certain herbs. Only I have this unique constitution. My father and grandfather tested me with the world's deadliest poisons, and none of them had any effect on me. So the red scorpion is my pet, and poison insects are my hidden weapons. Pulling back my sleeve, I immediately took the medicine from my pocket and held it out to Xi Xingci. Quick, take this. Although Xi Xingci didn't understand, he did as he was told. A strange sensation spread through his internal organs. His entire body felt as if it were being soaked and nourished in warm water. Yet, only his heart was beating incredibly fast. He was somewhat bewildered. Is this some kind of new secret medicine? Does it make the heart race? The kind that makes the discomfort disappear? How is it? How do you feel? He heard the girl in front of him, her eyes wide, looking at him. His heart began to beat wildly again. His master had once said he was destined to have weak family ties. It was true. Since birth, he had never received any real affection, and he had never been interested in any woman. He had thought he would depart this world in silence with this broken body of his. But then, Wu Manor appeared, giving him a glimmer of hope for survival. He couldn't help but stare at Wu Manor, at the slight flush on her face. His voice was raspy.
I feel very joyful.
Great, I'm joyful too. Hearing this, I immediately used a small knife to make a cut on my finger and held it out to him. If I had known my blood would work, I would have cured you long ago. Xi Xingci froze.
Your blood?
Yes. The medicinal properties in your body are too strong, and your constitution is too cold. It happens to harmonize perfectly with my warm constitution.
So you want to use your blood to make medicine to cure my illness?
Yes. Aren't I incredibly smart? To my surprise, upon hearing this, Xi Xingci became completely furious. He turned his back to me.
No need. I won't touch any medicine made from your blood. I am already a dying man. Don't waste your efforts on me in the future.
Seeing him like this, I got angry too. All right, you said it yourself. Then just suffer to death for all I care. After that day, Xi Xingci indeed never sought me out again. Every night when his illness flared up, he just endured it. In the end, my heart softened, and I sent little red scorpion over to help him. But after all, that only treated the symptoms, not the root cause. It was merely delaying the inevitable. On this day, Xi Xingci suddenly came to find me on his own initiative, saying he wanted to enter the palaces and needed an anesthetic pain-relieving pill. I refused. In your current state, you cannot possibly withstand the toll it will take.
Do you have any other way right now to help me temporarily restore my strength?
I don't. But is it absolutely necessary to take it? Isn't it still ahead of the scheduled time for your showdown?
It is indeed not time yet.
Xi Xingci paused.
But today, there is something far more important than that.
In the end, I still gave it to him. More important than the showdown. Then it must be extremely urgent. He was gone for the entire day. I sat in the manor, unable to find peace. As dusk fell, he finally returned, his face deathly pale. Clearly, the effects of the medicine had begun to wear off. He forced himself to command the servants to hand me an object covered in red cloth. Unveiling it, it turned out to be an inscription written by the emperor himself. On it were written 7 large characters: the world's greatest female physician. In the center, the imperial seal was stamped. He weakly curled the corners of his mouth at me.
I got the item for you. Congratulations, you are free, as of today. Physician Wu.
I never expected that Xi Xingci had entered the palace today while ill, just to secure this plaque for me. He said to me,
My time is short. I can already feel it. The dispute between him and me has nothing to do with you. Staying any longer will only cost you your life. You have helped prolong my life for this long, and I am already content. If there is a next life.
Before he could finish his sentence, Xi Xingci laughed at himself first.
Having taken so much medicine in this lifetime, even if there is a next life, I'm afraid it will only be another sickly body. So it is better if we don't meet.
His face grew paler and paler as he spoke, and his body was trembling slightly. Yet he did his best to maintain his composure, pretending everything was fine. Fool. I couldn't help but lean in, grabbing Xi Xingci's hand, stealing my resolve. I pressed my palm directly against his back. The vital energy instantly dispersed. He gently tried to push me away, but I pressed down again impatiently. Hurry up. In the end, he relented, closing his eyes. Vaguely, I felt as if something was not quite right, but I couldn't put my finger on it, until finally, my leg suddenly went weak, and I collapsed into his arms. Oh no! Could I have been infected too? I gasped greedily for fresh air. and only after a long while did my head begin to clear. I looked at Xi Xingci, the sweat on his forehead had dried. His complexion also looked much better. Without even asking, I could tell he was doing much better. But after succeeding that one time, Xi Xingci refused to let me do it again. He even uncharacteristically and firmly ordered me to leave the manor. Finally, in a letter sent by Zhang Xingyan, I found the reason. 3 days later, on the Empress's birthday, the Emperor would host a grand banquet to celebrate. The entire household of Prince Ning would also enter the palace. With all his adversaries present, it would be the perfect opportunity to strike. No wonder he wanted me to leave beforehand. I didn't make things difficult for him. At dawn, I bid him farewell. Time was pressing. I had to rush back to Medicine Valley. Xi Xingci's methods were not clever and were even somewhat blunt, but he had no choice. His body could not hold out long enough for a slow, calculated plan. He had gathered and compiled irrefutable evidence of that mother and son's control over the court, their embezzlement of treasury funds, and their disregard for human life over recent years, exposing their evil deeds in front of all the officials. Inside the Great Hall, there were members of their faction, but many were also Xi Xingci's men. Even more were observing the emperor's attitude, waiting for the situation to change, so they could choose the right moment to align themselves. The emperor leafed through the dossiers with an expressionless face. Below, the crown prince knelt on the ground, loudly crying out that he was wrong. Today was the Empress's birthday banquet. The scene before him was actually something the Emperor did not wish to see. Regardless of their affection, she was still the companion who had slept by his side for most of his life. He waved his hand. This burden.
Let the court of investigation handle the inquiry. If a prince breaks the law, he must be punished just like any commoner. But if he did not, those who slander and defame him, we will also punish them severely.
Xi Xingci also knelt on the ground. He wanted to say more, but was interrupted by the emperor.
We are tired. We will discuss the rest another day.
Xi Xingci clenched his fists tightly. The outside of the doors was filled with his trusted men. Although they were no match for the Imperial Guard, it would be more than enough to deal with those two amidst the chaos. Today he had prepared a twofold plan. If His Majesty did not deal with them strictly, then he would directly take the law into his own hands. Just as he was about to send the secret signal, the kneeling crown prince suddenly jumped up from the spot. Yes, he jumped. He kept hopping around in a highly ridiculous manner. On the other side, the originally dignified and elegant empress began to scratch herself. It was in a highly unseemly manner, rubbing and scratching back and forth. Xi Xingci realized something, and his temples throbbed violently. He looked toward the corner behind him to the side, where a delicate-looking young eunuch stood bowing and scraping. Their eyes met, and the eunuch even revealed a row of small white teeth, giving a little smile. A trusted follower asked with his eyes, "Lord Xi." The man shook his head imperceptibly, signaling them to wait a moment longer. Seeing this, the emperor could finally no longer sit still.
What are you doing? Sit down this instant. How utterly disgraceful.
Yet, the farce continued. The empress, who had been scratching herself just moments ago, suddenly began to sing at the top of her lungs. The crown prince, who was jumping up and down incessantly, began to dance gracefully to the melody. Seeing this, some palace maids and eunuchs hurried over to try and stop them, but they were completely overpowered by the two.
Your Majesty, I have completely lost control of my body.
Father, I cannot stop either.
Singing and dancing. Sorcery.
Sorcery. This must be sorcery.
Summon the Imperial Physicians. Quickly. Imperial Physicians. Protect the Emperor. Summoning protect the Emperor first.
The main hall instantly descended into utter chaos. The timing was finally just right. Holding a special megaphone from Medicine Valley, I stepped out from the back. Your Majesty, Crown Prince, how does it feel to be drugged? The entire hall instantly fell silent.
Who are you? Hand over the antidote this instant.
Ignoring the shouting duo, I walked up to the emperor and knelt down. Wu Manor of Medicine Valley pays respects to your majesty. I raised above my head the token that the emperor had bestowed upon my grandfather years ago, which I had retrieved during my recent trip back to Medicine Valley. The emperor took it. As I continued, I wish to report the Empress and the Crown Prince for their disregard for human life, specifically for administering a lethal poison to the heir of Prince Ning's mansion. The Emperor's face darkened.
Do you have concrete proof?
I am the proof. Years ago, the first potent drug the Empress used on the former crown princes originated from Medicine Valley. The story begins with my grandfather. He was a physician who also cared about fame, but he was even more fanatical than I am. He entered the palace directly to become an imperial physician, specializing in developing medicines for the royal family. At first, My grandfather was hopelessly indulged in the emperor's trust in him, until one day he saw the young crown princes and was shocked to realize his medical skills were being exploited, although it had nothing to do with him. The poison the crown prince ingested indeed contained ingredients from the medicine valley. Fearing the emperor's wrath, my grandfather feigned illness and packed up to flee overnight. It wasn't until he was on his deathbed that he summoned the successors of our valley to tell them about this, and left instructions that if the young crown prince were ever in danger, we must save his life at all costs. And so, here I am. To the emperor, coveting power made him far more vigilant than the embezzlement of silver. He had never thought that fratricide would happen among his own children. His face turned cold, and he dismissed everyone. He looked at the crown prince. Is what he said the truth? The crown prince was still jumping around, shaking his head while hopping. The emperor probably felt embarrassed. He slammed his hand down.
Samoni, send the crown prince back to the side palace. He is not to leave until this is fully investigated.
Based on the words of just one person, you cannot treat me like this.
The crown prince pushed away the guards who stepped forward, unable to conceal his hatred as he glared at Xi Xingci.
Father, do you still refuse to admit your favoritism toward him?
Rebellious son.
The emperor was completely infuriated. The empress wanted to speak up and plead for mercy, but she kept dancing. She couldn't get a word in at all. The crown prince, filled with grievances, only waiting for today to make things clear.
Imperial father always slips out quietly every month to go to the Prince of Ning's manor,
Equipping him with an elite guard, specifically tasked with searching for all kinds of rare herbs and formulas.
Every time you implement reforms, you always consult with him.
a dying man, and merely the son of a favored consort. Why does he deserve so much of your care? I am clearly the crown prince.
Your Majesty, please appease your anger.
Her instinct for survival made the empress quickly fall to her knees. The emperor's hands began to tremble with rage.
You and the empress have done so many filthy things behind my back. Do you truly think I do not know? If you weren't an imperial prince, I would have thrown you into the death cells long ago.
The crown prince fell completely silent. The emperor looked at me.
Girl of the Wu family, give them the antidote. I will give Xingci an explanation for this matter.
Only, my expression was a bit awkward. Anyone who warrants my use of poison, I believe deserves to be punished in the first place. So, I never prepare an antidote. Seeing my difficult expression, the emperor shook his head.
Forget it. Just let them keep dancing for now.
The crown prince's faction collapsed completely. The emperor had few offspring, with only these 2 adult sons. Seeing that Xi Xingci's condition seemed to have improved recently, he proposed the idea of re-establishing him as the crown prince. But Xi Xingci declined.
Your servant is now the heir of the Ning estate. Making me the crown prince would violate the rules.
Are you blaming me for sending you out of the palace back then, before the truth was fully investigated?
Your servant dare not. It is just that my physical constitution would make it difficult to bear such a responsibility.
That was indeed the truth. During this period, although Xi Xingci was in contact with me every day, using my vital energy and blood to sustain his life, the damage accumulated over the years meant he was still at risk of fading away at any moment. Xi Xingci suggested,
If your majesty has no one to entrust this to, but there is still the princess.
The eldest princess is of a steady character and cares deeply for the people. The capable people under her are led by Zhang Xingyan, all of whom are outstanding talents of the martial world. They come from humble backgrounds and possess extraordinary courage. Standing nearby, I pricked up my ears. Who? Zhang Xingyan. He is actually the princess's retainer. No wonder he could find out so many things. So, could it be that my saving her in the village was a trap the princess set specifically for me? Hearing this, His Majesty fell into deep thought. Before leaving the palace, I gave the emperor a few pills. They were left to me by my grandfather, who said if I ever had an audience with the emperor, I must deliver his message. Grandfather asked me to tell you that the herb you were curious about back then, he found it. The herb was made into 2 pills. One is the golden jaxi pill, and the other is the silver chengcheng pill. The effects of both last for 4 hours. Holding the 2 pills, the emperor's thoughts seemed to drift far away. After a long while, he smiled.
I am reminded of the days I spent with him in the herb garden, searching for medicinal herbs. In you, I seem to see his shadow again. Your family has had a single heir for 4 generations, and your elders all have titles. Why don't I bestow one upon you as well?
At the mention of this, I instantly perked up.
Highly skilled in medicine and possessing a chivalrous heart, how about calling you the medicine hero?
Medicine hero? A fine name. Treating Xi Xingci indeed brought me a moment of glory. And the title bestowed by His Majesty made my reputation soar even higher. Those seeking my medical help started from the prince's manor gates and lined up all the way to the entrance of the alley. The entire street was packed so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. But I'm only a half-baked doctor, incapable of completely curing Xi Xingci, and I can't stay in the prince's mansion forever. I have my own dreams to pursue. Before going to sleep that night, I exchanged breath with Xi Xingci as usual. The man's eyes were tightly shut as he clutched the collar of my robe, inhaling with absolute focus. "I'm leaving tomorrow." Xi Xingci froze mid-motion, then simply said, "All right." He agreed so readily that I felt a bit displeased. "I've examined your body. Although the effects of the medicine haven't fully dissipated, your life won't be in danger anytime soon. I've asked my sister-in-law, Zhang Yi of the Huichen sect, to examine you." Calculating the time, she should arrive tomorrow morning, though she can be a bit annoying. Her medical skills are decent.
All right.
Why was it all right again? Aside from that, couldn't he say anything else?
Where do you plan to go? When do you set off?
Once she finishes your examination, I'll leave with them. The destination isn't set yet, but probably towards Taikang and Jiangnan. These past few years, my brother has been traveling everywhere with Zhang Yi, practicing medicine and performing good deeds. They once stayed in Taikang. The Double Phoenix Festival, the Dragon and Lion dances, and the White Ape movement technique are all things I deeply yearn to see. One last question. He looked at me. "Are you short of an attendant?" I was taken aback, only then realizing what he was planning. Me, taking a frail, sickly man on a long journey. If he is sick, I'd have to be even crazier to agree. The next day, Zhang Yangyi arrived with my brother. She took just one look at Xi Xingci and said, "I cannot cure this man." I immediately flew into a rage. "Zhang Yi, are you doing this on purpose? Are you jealous because I have the title of the world's best and was even named the medicine hero, while she was merely a fairy of folk rumors?" My grudge with Zhang Yi could be traced back several years. Back then, the most handsome young master in white in the martial arts world confessed his love to her, only to be coldly and ruthlessly rejected by her. If that were all, it would be fine, but less than 2 months later, she actually fell in love with my brother at first sight and married him directly. My brother was terrible at making medicine, had average looks, and had a soft temper. How did he compare to the young master in white in any way? It was simply absurd. She had terrible taste. If it weren't for Xi Xingci, I wouldn't have bothered to look for her. Seeing me raise my hand to poison her, my brother quickly said,
"Yeah, take another close look. Is there really no way?"
"It is not completely hopeless. At least your sister has been treating him quite well." She glanced at me. "Your extreme yang constitution is indeed the only cure." I frowned, but that only treats the symptoms, not the root cause. The human body values balance. If his bodily functions can regulate themselves, his life can be prolonged. Since that is the case, whether it treats the root cause doesn't really matter. For the sake of the paintings the heir once gave me, I will write a prescription for you, but the medicinal booster must still be manner. I was curious about what kind of prescription it was. The harmony of yin and yang. For once, I asked humbly, "What harmony? How do we harmonize?" Before I could figure it out, Xi Xingci blushed. He glanced at me with flickering eyes.
No.
What harmony? How did they all understand it, while I was the only one kept in the dark? Are they excluding me? Zhang Yi let out a sigh. "Forget it. I knew you wouldn't dare to try. As for this body, you'll just have to leave it to fate." "I don't dare. What is there for me to be afraid of? Isn't it just some harmony? How much qi and blood do you need to draw to make the medicine? Mix it for me, right here." A few hours later, I finally understood what Zhang Yi meant. Xi Xingci stood opposite me, asking me, embarrassingly,
Things have already come to this. Are you really going to leave me behind and go alone? Attendants, servants, carriage drivers, are you really not lacking any of them?
"No, I'm not lacking any." How bizarre. I now feel like an elf bursting with energy. My whole body feels amazing now that I think about it, but I do seem to lack someone to warm my bed. Do you want to?
Yes, yes, yes. My luggage is already packed. Once I say goodbye to my father, I can set off with you.
Watching him scramble to his feet, I let out a sigh. He really can't do without me. A frail prince. What else can I do? I'll just have to take him along. Who told me to have such high medical ethics?